Hey up! Right, Royal Enfield's Bullet launch last week, what can I say? I got it totally wrong. All the major Western motorcycle magazines got it wrong. And most of the motorcycling public that were interested also got it wrong. There was no Bullet 500. Now, I think the response I got from viewers straight after this launch sums it up really. Having received the news that there was only a Bullet 350 in the offering, a lot of viewers came back to that original video that I published last week, or they came back to the video that I published on Friday. And the two most frequently used words in those comments were unimpressed and disappointed, which pretty much sums up how I felt over the weekend. We've had a rapid succession of fantastic, groundbreaking motorcycles from Royal Enfield over the last 4 or 5 years. And then last week, to me, it felt like they'd played a trick on us. If I'm honest, the pre-launch countdown, the whole thing felt a bit clickbaity. Fair enough, if it was just me that had gone down this 500 bullet rabbit hole, you could argue that I'd put 2 and 2 together and come up with a number that was higher than 4, but everyone fell for it. Well, nearly everyone. Now, we did all hedge our bets by mooting that maybe it was just a homage to previous models, but it seemed unlikely, because if you're just releasing a 350, why mention the 500 at all? Because now it's clear that it's not in any way applicable to the launch. Now, I did watch 1 or 2 channels in the morning that had released videos clearly confused and scratching their heads and wondering if further announcements were going to be made during the course of Friday, but nothing came. And even Royal Enfield's own pre-launch videos just pertain to the Bullet line in general. There were no specifics until the actual launch. Now, I've got to say, I've watched all the Royal Enfield launches from, going back 5 years ago. This is the most lacklustre one I've seen so far. It feels like it was a bit of an afterthought. It seems that the Western press have been kept out of this altogether. I've received nothing. And to date, none of the US or UK channels and publications have published anything that amounts to new material that could have come from a press release. Only the Indian channels and magazines were in on what was going on. But even looking at their first impression videos, apart from 1 or 2, the views are surprisingly low. Definitely not where you would expect to see them on a new Royal Enfield launch. And it does seem odd that the Western press hasn't really been informed of what's going on. Because over a year ago now, I was told that all future Royal Enfield launches would be international. They would all go out at the same time, which clearly hasn't happened here. Now, you know that I love the Royal Enfield brand. To be quite honest, going forward, I wouldn't really consider any other brand of motorcycle. And that's purely a matter of choice and where I currently am with, the pastime of motorcycling. But I did think to myself this weekend, has the Royal Enfield bubble just burst? Has Royal Enfield peaked? And are we starting to see things go downhill now? I'll tell you what I think has happened. Royal Enfield Bullet is Royal Enfield's main identity. It's the iconic model that they are most famous for. Outside of India, I think it's fair to say that the classic models were preferred. Now, these were a derivative of the Bullet, a nod to, the pre-1949 model. But as far as Royal Enfield's model placement has gone over the last 20 years or so, they're not a Bullet. Now, the actual Bullet is a world record holder. It's the longest continuously produced motorcycle in the world, currently standing at 91 years. It's only 9 years away from its model centenary, and no other motorcycle manufacturer in the world has a model that can come anywhere near that record. This is a major ace for any motorcycle manufacturer to have up the sleeve, so they can't let it go. It has to at least be kept alive until its centenary, which is why to date the old, now obsolete 350 Bullet has been kept into production to maintain that record. Now, I've got no idea what the sales have been like on this model for the last 2 years, especially when you consider that the J-Series 350 platform was released. But it didn't matter if people didn't buy it. The objective was to keep it in production to maintain that record. Which begs the question, why have they left the new 350 Bullet so long? I mean, we've seen the Meteor, the Hunter, and the new Classic 350. And by all accounts, the feedback that I'm getting from people is that the new Bullet is only a slight warming over of the Classic 350. A few cosmetic changes to make it fit the bill, and that's it. Now, I think what's happened here is that Royal Enfield has become a casualty or victim of its own success. And I'm going to have to expand on that, otherwise you might take it the wrong way. Now, you've only got to look at Western YouTube videos to see that the Classic model far outranked the Bullet in the popularity stakes. Some countries didn't even bother to import the Bullet, they stuck with the Classic because it was so popular. And although everyone knows what the Bullet is, the balance of sales in the Western world of the Classic to the Bullet was so skewed towards the Classic that the Bullet became irrelevant. However, I've no doubt that the traditional Bullet was still popular in India, but in the last 4 or 5 years Royal Enfield's been chasing international sales, so the Bullet didn't really rank that high in their business plan. A new J-Series Bullet had to come eventually, but it wasn't a priority. And I think what backs this up is the launch video that Royal Enfield have released for the Bullet, because it's clearly focused 100% at the Indian rider. Now, I have had a look on the UK Royal Enfield website, and it does appear that it is coming to the UK, so I would presume it's going to be coming to a lot of other countries as well. But don't forget, the Royal Enfield Bullet has a very rich history in Indian culture. In fact, it's got a longer history than the Royal Enfield Bullet ever had in the UK. If Royal Enfield's going to hit that world record for the centenary of the Royal Enfield Bullet, they've got to keep it alive. But it appears to me that they had to take care of business first. They had to get the models with the most international appeal out first. The Bullet historically hasn't sold that well internationally, but it has a huge following in its own domestic market. The primary market for this bike is India. Now, I am still a little bit annoyed with Royal Enfield. I don't think for a moment that they are unaware that the 500cc classic variant of the Bullet internationally is sorely missed. And I would be very surprised if they genuinely didn't make the connection that people were expecting this launch to be a 500, bearing in mind the pre-launch countdown. The 350 Classic is a brilliant bike, and bearing in mind their innate similarities, the Bullet 350 will be just as good, but I don't think that really it's going to be that different. Which I think explains my feelings, and it explains the feedback that I'm getting from customers in the UK and the US. A sort of a casual disinterest. Royal Enfield are just really offering two of the same bike, but in different flavours. Pre-1950 and post-1950. I'm sure there are going to be takers all over the world, especially in India. The design of the Classic isn't for everyone, I fully appreciate that. So some people are going to be attracted to a bike whose design is focused a little bit later in the 20th century. And of course, in the home market of India, there are going to be traditionalists who want a genuine Bullet rather than a classic. But as it stands, I don't think the bubble has burst, not yet. We know that there's a Bullet or classic variant coming bearing the 650 twin engine. Now, especially over the 350J platform, that's going to tick a lot of boxes for a lot of people. But as fantastic as the oil-cooled twin-cylinder 650 engine is, it doesn't have the character of a big single, something that I think a lot of people want and appreciate. Now, I would have used my 350 Classic to film this video, but I had to use the 500 because obviously I've got that speedo problem on the 350, for which I'm still waiting for a resolution. And with the amount of speed cameras we encounter these days, it just wasn't worth taking the risk. But in a way, I was glad because, you know, the 500 is just such a wonderful bike. And I did find myself sort of lamenting that the prospect of a new single-cylinder 500 just seems to be getting further and further away as time goes on. We know that the 650 is coming either as a classic or a Bullet, and yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a wonderful bike, and it's something that I will certainly consider for the future myself, but in my mind it'll never truly be a suitable replacement for the 500 single. Now, in other news, while I was sort of researching this video over the weekend, I found a spy shot. I'm not going to show it on here because there'll be copyright issues. A spy shot of a Hunter sporting a water-cooled motor. Now, I do believe that this photograph is genuine. You could certainly tell that from the radiator that it was a water-cooled motor. It was definitely a Hunter or something very similar to the Hunter, and the rider was wearing what seems to be the obligatory Royal Enfield jacket in green. Now, I was actually sort of aware of this, probably going back about 6 months ago. Or should I say, I was aware of the rumour, and I think this is going to be Royal Enfield's answer to Triumph's recent entry into the Indian market with their 400cc bikes. As we know, the appearance of the 450cc Himalayan water-cooled single has been circulating for a long time. We've seen, spy footage, spy shots. We know that's coming. Now, again, I sort of know from rumours in the industry, even going back a year ago, that the development stage of this engine was pretty much at an end. And it kind of makes sense that Royal Enfield will have a rebuttal to Triumph. They're not going to take that lying down. My personal view is that they've had, these two bikes more or less ready for some time, and they were just waiting for Triumph to show its hand before they made the move. At least that's the suspicion that I've had for the past couple of months, and that's how it seems. This 450cc single-cylinder water-cooled engine being pretty much common knowledge, we don't know an awful lot about it in the realms of power output, etc. Bajaj might be a big company, but it doesn't have the brand equity that Royal Enfield has. And if I'm honest, Triumph doesn't either. Now, I have been keeping an eye on the Triumph 400cc bikes, and once again, they don't seem to have quite got the reception even I thought they would get. Interest in the bike has been okay, maybe even slightly better than okay, but it hasn't reached the heights I expected. And I fear that all they may have done here is awaken a sleeping giant. Having said that, we don't truly know what's happening with this prospective new Hunter variant, or what the real-world capabilities and specifications are of this new 450cc liquid-cooled engine. So for the moment, it is all to play for. And I don't know whether I mentioned it, but I am still very cross with Royal Enfield for what they've done. Now, hopefully, I will eventually get a press release for the Bullet 350, and hopefully, I'll get a chance to swing a leg over one at some point in the future. Though, as it stands right now, I've got absolutely no idea what those timescales might be. So the best thing you can do is leave a like on this video and subscribe to this channel. Now, if when you subscribe to this channel you hit the notification bell and ensure that your notifications are enabled, YouTube will let you know when I finally drop that video. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and my other videos. I was quite touched by a lot of the comments that I got on Friday's video, my play button, etc. Reading the 200 plus comments on that video really provided me with a very positive weekend in spite of what I've been discussing on this video. Thank you, you're a great bunch of people. Now, I will of course be back on Friday, so until then, please ride safely, and I'll see you soon.